Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
G'day and welcome to the House of Fun edition of Thrash and Treasure, the torture chamber musical comedy podcast that dreaded the day Stan confused Slim Shady for Vanilla Ice. And speaking of dazed and confused, and I'm joined as usual by the latest recruit of our Pantaloon platoon, a soldier who's bringing the full metal jazz hands to our musical war. But do you hear the people sing for Sergeant Steve of Stage Command? How's it going?
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me again.
You've been busy with your show, Music Rewind podcast.
Music Rewind and several other things. It's all going well.
Yes, you got your Cinema Decon as well. Or is it Cinema Deacon?
Cinema Decon. Yeah, we're doing a whole tournament
okay.
right now for the 1970s to find the best movie. Good stuff.
Well, the best movie from the 1970s is the one that we're going to talk about today, later in this episode, for the musical. But anyways, because you're new to this show, we're going to do a little bit of a hazing for you. So I've got 5 questions for you. Are you ready? Be put in the hot seat?
Shoot, go for it.
All right. So first up, where are all the places you've lived from birth until now? Like all the cities?
Oh, damn. All right. Well, let's tell the entire internet my my lodging past here. I was born in North Carolina. I was raised in Northern Illinois. Joined the Army and got shipped out to Hawaii, of all places.
Oh, my favorite place in the world.
It's a nice place to visit.
No, it's a beautiful, beautiful place.
I'll leave that there, though. Nice place to visit.
You didn't get drugged there. I did, and I still want to live there.
Let's see, after Hawaii, moved back to Illinois, got recalled for the Army, was in D.C. for a year at the Pentagon.
Oh, yeah, Dillingham. Is it Dillingham?
Rings a bell, but that wasn't where I was at.
Oh, that's not saying that's the airport, up like the airstrip up north of the island. I do know the name of the barracks.
Well, technically, I was at Fort Belvoir, and then I had to go into DC every day.
They filmed at the barracks for Lost. That's how I know. I can't remember what it's called. Maybe it starts with SH, I think.
In Hawaii?
Yeah.
Oh, Fort Shafter.
No, there's another one.
Oh, well, there's Fort Shafter, which is kind of run down, and that's the main offices of USARPAC, but I was stationed at Schofield Barracks.
Schofield. Yeah, I just said it starts with SH, but it starts with SCH. Yes, I did. I know what it was called because I filmed Lost there.
You were wrong. Yes.
Well, close. It was one of the few places that I wasn't able to get into to take photos of their filming locations because of obviously it being an army base.
They didn't want you to see all the rundown buildings that they had soldiers living in, that they can't tear down because there's literal bullet holes in them from the Japanese.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was there and the film studios. Everywhere else I was granted access to, like even like the priest quarters at the church and stuff like that, and the vet clinic at the zoo behind the scenes and everything like that. Like, anyway, sorry, it's about you, not me.
I was there when they were filming like the movie Pearl Harbor and stuff all there.
Oh, wow.
That's when I was out there.
That awful shit fest of a film. Anyway.
Oh yeah, it was terrible. But I got to see the World War II airplanes flying overhead and stuff. That was pretty cool.
Anyways, yeah, so Hawaii.
So after Hawaii, I went back to Illinois for a little bit. But then I got recalled by the Army, and I did a year in D.C. at the Pentagon.
Oh, wow.
Then got sent to Baghdad for a little over a year. And then when I got back, I moved to Georgia, where I am today. So that's in between another 30 trips to the Middle East. My home base has been Atlanta, Georgia since then.
Where the 1996 Olympics was. Anyway, so what would be in your ultimate rock star rider? Because I'm sure you've thought about it.
I have now and then, and I'm going to say this in a selfish way, as if I was an actor, which I have zero acting ability, I have zero musical ability. But if I did,
you might not have acting ability, but the back of your head does.
I am best singer in the shower. Anyway,
and that
I'm going anti-kids on this.
Okay.
Despite my own son being a stage actor and already done a tour and whatnot, I've seen what happens behind the scenes, and I'm just kicking all kids off because, man, kids are annoying.
Yep.
And if I was the star, I don't want any kids anywhere near there. So that's written. I mean, I don't care if I'm the star if I'm Miss Hannigan. There's no kids on set. There's no kids backstage. Nothing. So much work goes into keeping the kids safe, keeping them educated, keeping them in the right clothes, keeping them all across everywhere. And even if you're not involved with the kids backstage, you are still involved with the kids backstage.
Yep.
So as the star of the show, I don't want to see a kid for that entire day.
Yep. Well, Annie's probably not the best production for you to do then. All right. So, what is your go-to travel music?
My go-to travel music, I actually have a travel playlist,
Yeah.
which is why I like that question because I like to hear what people would add to theirs. But I like long jams. So it's filled with songs that are, 10 to 15 minutes long. You've got your In Memory of Elizabeth Reed by the Allman Brothers, Echoes from Pink Floyd, Stay from David Bowie, live at Nassau, things like that, Corduroy from Pearl Jam. There's just long live jams is what I can zone out to. And then before I know it, I'm at my destination.
All right. And what are your 3 favorite movies?
Oh man, that is a difficult question there. I mean, for a guy who runs a movie podcast as well, I'm going to go with, off the top of my head, The Godfather, which is an easy one. I could watch that right now. It's just a cinematic masterpiece to me. John Carpenter's The Thing. That is a horror masterpiece of just human and alien and special effects, practical effects, brilliant acting, brilliant atmosphere. Just a wonderful movie. Third one. I want to say Big Trouble in Little China, but I don't want to double up on John Carpenter.
Well, doesn't matter.
It does to me. I'm going to throw an oddball out there for you, though. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Wow, not even Excellent Adventure, the sequel.
Oh no, the Bogus Journey is so much better. It's darker, it's funnier, the music's better. It's a wonderful movie, and I can't watch that. It's one of those movies that if it's on, I must sit down and watch it till the end. It's just that entertaining to me. I love that movie.
You'll never guess what my 3 favorites are.
Final Destination.
No, that's for Tony Todd.
Rent.
No, that's a musical.
No, I cannot guess.
For listeners at home, he's just naming the posters on the wall behind me. I think people are probably surprised. Like Jurassic Park is like really up there, but instinctively, the 3 I usually say: Ratatouille,
Great,
Scream.
Okay.
Yeah. And you'll never guess this one: Cruel Intentions. What are you laughing for? It's a great movie. It is.
Oh no, it's a terrible movie.
Funny. No, it's not. It's wonderful. I was a teenage boy when that was released. It was an awakening.
Oh, it was. I'm not arguing that. I mean, you got Sarah Michelle Gellar right there, and it's like sexy Buffy, but
it's camp.
But it just
wonderful.
It was extreme camp. It was camp before I realized what that was. I could never tell if they were trying to be campy or if they were trying to be serious, and it came off that way. It's somewhere in the middle,
and it's so good. It is so good.
And then doesn't the dude get hit by a car at the end?
Spoiler alert! Shit.
Yeah, I remember laughing in the theater. That was one of my first moments where I literally laughed in the theater, like spur of the moment. Something was so funny.
Oh, and it plays Bittersweet Symphony.
Yeah, they were trying so hard.
Oh, I'm gonna cry. Oh. I love that movie so much.
But Ratatouille's great.
Ratatouille's, I cried at the end of that too. And Scream, I just think is just such a wonderful movie. It's wonderful. It's joyous.
Oh yeah, it was great. Its detriment is that it's been referenced and parodied too much, and it's lost some of its luster. And sequels, way too many.
Oh no. Well, okay, I'll agree with 5 and 6. They shouldn't have been. But anyways, last question: what is your day job?
Oh, I am a manager at a company here in Atlanta, and I run their network infrastructure team. I've been doing computer networking since 25, 30 years now, somewhere in there.
And that's it. So you are now officially broken into the team. Congratulations. And we have invited you into the group chat. So anyways, guess what?
What?
We have another legendary British diva in the skank circle today. And he could have been anything that he wanted to be, but don't it make your heart glad that he was born to be a street urchin? Because this stellar fella first hit the spotlight as Nancy's unborn child, but we're Oliver that twist since we consider himself part of the West End family in the epic 1994 revival, where a life on the streets led to a life of crime and madness. So let's splurge and Charleston our way down the short path to ecstasy for a roadshow of no return as we travel like the Essex Serpent or a cobra over the Devil's Bridge. Turn left at Cemetery Junction and head straight onto Olivier Award-winning Our House to pick up his first nomination before Nero far wherever he are, driving in my car across this pommy nation station to the lighthouse so we can catch the night boat to Cairo for one last night of crime and madness in Soho at the Fifth Estate. Talk about a Midsummer Night's Dream. And luckily, that dream came true as this King of Camelot gallivants a lot with Lancelot through the red mist of Avalon. But we've still Avalon way to go, so take the hand of another and sing on the wings of a dove as we fly, boys, fly, soaring over this dazzling career that embodies the sun and the rain, even on a grey day or the darkest day. However, no more waiting for the ghost train while I call upon the good people of the Last Kingdom to please help me, Hatfield, McCoy, Burton, Taylor, Timon of Athens, Michael and Kane, as we hop on Johnny the Horse and say the G'day like that day we sang a chorus line or two for this actor, singer, writer, physician, alienist, hunter, killer, beauty, beast, saint and stranger as we unlock a comedy of errors and make a discovery which has no doubt made stranger things happen in the first shadow. But fear not, cause we're joined by the golden boy of Hull and one hell of a superstar who can brighten, rock and roll by going one step beyond our torture chamber in the middle of our street where 4 lives with the Last Jedi. Yet it was this experience serving in a Star War that soon had him gallipoling towards gunfire in 1917. And if you think there was a casualty or two there, and if you think that was in poor taste, you should see what this man did to Fontaine. It left us all les miserables. But sadly, I better start wrapping this up because there's one day more, man, to toast this foremost foreman who's coasted to more than just a few applause. There's British King George, and of course he won awards, Alexander Hamilton. So before I become the embarrassment and cause you all to hit the panic button using the hammer of the gods, let's open up the Riot Club to begin the reckoning and quiz this OG on the roots of his theatrical trauma that turned him from child gangster with Bugsy Malone to committing the bank job with Daddy Statham in this criminally cardiac arresting causing career. So it's my highest honor to interrogate this incredible icon. So put your hands in the air and wave them around for the arrestingly amazing Mr. Michael Jibson. Welcome to the torture chamber. Pardon me while I die.
Wow, that was about 10 times as long as I was expecting it to be. That's lovely, thank you.
Oh my goodness gracious me.
That was one breath as well. You need to take a big breath now.
Yeah, I can't believe Caroline didn't warn you.
Oh, I sort of had an idea. She did give me a kind of a warning. Okay. So, and you mentioned it in the blurb you sent me about this. So yeah, no, it was lovely to hear and very well put together. Thank you. Was that everything?
No. It wasn't. All right, no, because I couldn't fit in your RSC play that you did, and all your radio work, and a bunch of other stuff. Your special skills like golf.
Well, I'll let you off.
But anyways, how you going? Welcome to the show.
I'm good. Yeah, thank you for having me on it. It's exciting to be here and talk about some things that I know about and some things that I don't know much about. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. You have been a working actor since you were a teenager, so this is something you do know a lot about. And now you're an Olivier Award winner. A belated congratulations. I'm sorry about the delay.
Thank you very much.
I didn't know you back then.
That's okay.
But another title famous for teenagers is Stranger Things. And you've just been Upside Down, which is actually where I currently am in Australia. So we won't spoil anything for the audience, but you're playing the character who grew up to look like Robert Englund. So what can you tell us about all the secrets?
Yeah, I was in it for a year. The show is just about to open on Broadway, I think in about 10 weeks or something like that. They've just started rehearsals. They're going to go into a full-on rehearsal thing. So Stranger Things, The First Shadow is a prequel story about Vecna. For those of you who have watched any of Stranger Things or not, Vecna is the monster of the whole, the bad guy of the whole thing, the whole story. And Stranger Things, The First Shadow explores his childhood when he was becoming the monster that we all know and love in the TV show, of which I played his father, Victor Creel. Vecna was known, before he was known as Vecna, he was known as Henry Creel, and I'm his dad.
That is really cool that you're part of that. And I have seen all the signs in New York that it's coming soon. And the next time I'm up there with my kid, I'm going to try and get in on that because all the TV shows for Stranger Things were filmed here in Atlanta where I live.
Right.
So it's pretty ingrained in this whole world.
How old's your kid?
He's 10.
Yeah, he's just about the right age. You might find some of it a little bit scary. I'm not going to beat around the bush.
He's a theater kid. He's good.
Fine. He'll love it then. It's probably the coolest thing he's probably ever going to see on stage. And what's interesting is it's a play. It's not a musical. There's some music in it, but it's like watching an episode of a TV show. The effects and the production are groundbreaking, raising the bar for what theatre can do. You feel like you're sitting watching a movie, but it's happening in front of you. It's live. It moves quick. It moves fast. It's exciting. The other thing I will mention as well is that there's lots of other characters in it that you know from the TV show of Stranger Things, but you're meeting them when they were younger versions of themselves.
Right.
Like Joyce?
Oh, I see. There's Joyce.
Oh, the Winona Ryder character, yeah.
Yeah. So Joyce is there, Hopper's there, Bob's there. So basically all the parents are there. Some other characters that you know and love. It's directed by Stephen Daldry and Justin Martin, who are incredibly gifted and talented and successful TV and film directors. And it's beautifully done. It's produced by Netflix. Kate Treefry, who's the main writer of the TV show with the Duffers, she's in the room in the rehearsals working out what the play is. She's written it. The Duffers are overseeing it. They were in the room. We met those guys. We met all the Netflix people. This is Netflix trying to get in on theatre, basically, after the people that produced Wicked, Universal Studios or whatever they are called. Universal realised that Wicked was probably the biggest asset they've got. And now they've turned that into a movie because the theatre show continues to make them more money than any other asset they have. Mm-hmm. So Netflix have gone, we need to get in on theatre. So it's exciting. And it's exciting for where theatre's going to go. I'm sure that we're going to see, apparently Game of Thrones, we're going to see something of that. The Hunger Games is coming to the stage. And they're not just doing an adaptation of a movie like some of these musicals are. They're doing other chapters that we haven't explored and putting them on stage, which is really exciting, like they did with Harry Potter. They've extended the story of Harry Potter with The Cursed Child. And it's the same people that produce that as well with Stranger Things. So it's exciting. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jedi and lightsabers telling some sort of chapter of the Star Wars universe in the theatre at some point.
I'm sure they'll push Bridgerton there first.
Probably. All that.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be the top of their list, I'm sure.
I suspect that might be a musical, but you never know.
But it actually already is.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, by the songwriters of Moana 2. That's how they got their gig.
There we are.
And we got the Demogorgon. Oh. But also, what I was meant to get is the Henry one.
That's him. That's actually number one. Technically, it's Henry, but in our story, at that point, he's known as number one. He's kind of shed, because when he's slightly older, so it's when you see Jamie Campbell-Bower playing him, whereas our story follows the younger version of number one when he's a boy and he's not wearing the white suit. He's not in the lab with younger Dr. Brenner, and he is Henry Creel. So he's not mentioned as being number one. Or is he?
If I remember right, in the show, wasn't that actor also in Johnny Depp's Sweeney Todd?
Yes, and Harry Potter.
That's correct, yeah.
Yes.
Jamie Campbell-Bower, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was Anthony. He was in Harry Potter?
Yeah, he was a younger child actor. He was involved in a company that I am still involved in, a company called the National Youth Music Theatre, which is a very prestigious theatrical production group in the UK that creates theatre with young people. That's not professional, but is a professional standard. And you have to audition to get into it. And Jamie was a part of that just after I was part of it. So I sort of know Jamie through that as well. And that's actually how he got cast in Sweeney Todd, because the guy who created the National Youth Music Theatre used to get asked for his recommendations for people, and he would help the casting directors. He cast, there's a guy called Mark Pickering, who's a very good friend of mine, who ended up playing young Masbeth in Sleepy Hollow, which Johnny Depp did. He's the young boy in that. He got cast off the back of the National Youth Music Theatre. Jamie Campbell-Bower and the girl, the three young people in Sweeney Todd. Jamie Bell, who played Billy Elliot, he was picked from that because of that company. So yeah, there's a little bit of info for you.
Yeah. So that actually leads into my question there. You know, given you started as a teenager in local theater, you're now in the process of starting up an arts trust at the Hull area. What can you tell us about that?
So I'm originally from a place called Hull in East Yorkshire. So Hull and East Yorkshire, they call it in terms of, you know, districts or whatever you want to call it. So Yorkshire is the county, but then East Yorkshire is the kind of district. And me and my friend Andy Pearson, who's also from Hull, who trained as an actor at Lambda in the UK many years ago, and now lives and works in Hull as a producer and a facilitator of the arts and stuff up there. We've set up a company called the Hull and East Yorkshire Arts and Culture Trust, or HAYACT for short. And we've been set up for a few years now, but we're now in the process of setting ourselves up as a charity status of our own, because we were under the umbrella of another charity. And we have helped not too many, but quite a few young people who want a leg up, want to start from disadvantaged backgrounds that might see hurdles in getting involved in the arts, whether it's being on the stage, working behind the camera, being a photographer, setting up a podcast, whatever it is. We want to hear from these kids who think, I can't afford to do that, but I've got this idea and I want to go and train as an artist or a ballet dancer or a photographer or in radio. Or, I mean, radio is kind of old school now, but it might be that they go, I really want to set up a podcast, but I don't have a place to do it or the studio, the equipment to do it. Come to us, we may be able to help you out. And at the moment, we've got small amounts of money that we're able to pass people's way. We have had, and we've been giving people, you know, a few £100 here and there to give them a train fare to get to an audition or to pay for the odd thing that they need. And it's been a really encouraging thing to start up. And the plan is that we want to grow it. So that's what that is.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, speaking of money, because you're in a movie I love, The Bank Job.
Oh, cool.
And I've seen this like 6 or 7 times. I absolutely love that movie. Well, actually, now I've seen it 7 or 8 times because I watched it again this week. And I've always known that part of it was filmed here in Melbourne. Did you know this?
I think I did know that. And I think that was because I think because Roger Donaldson is Australian who directed it. And I can't remember which bit it was that was filmed. I know they filmed some of it in Spain.
I think it was Michael X's house.
Right, okay.
I think. Now, looking at the trees in the background, where Gail gets buried, Gail Benson. For listeners at home, we're talking about the an activist, Michael X, who went to prison for a murder.
Yeah, Peter de Jersey, he was a lovely guy and still is a lovely guy and works very well. He does a lot of stuff on stage. He's a great actor. Yeah, I've got a feeling that they may well have shot the exterior of the house and then everything else that they shot that was meant to be outside the house might have been in Spain. I don't ever remember the actors, because you can often, I've shot scenes where I'm in Manchester filming over my shoulder into a room,
Yeah.
and then you turn the camera around and I'm actually on the hotel balcony that I'm meant to be in Spain. Every time they cut it round, you're in two different countries. It's crazy, which is kind of cool for people who don't know how the film works.
Have a look at it again, because I'm pretty certain it's when she gets buried. It's stringy bark gum tree in the background.
Really? Okay.
Which is very Australian. I went to the Stringy Bark Festival and everything.
That makes sense, because maybe they decided they didn't have the house that they needed, and Roger probably went, "That's the house I want to go shoot," and let's shoot it. He was lovely, really good director, really lovely guy as well. I liked him a lot.
I'm sure the information's there. Now, my question about it is, though, what do you think was really in those boxes?
I mean, it's up for grabs, isn't it? Because obviously 99% of that story was completely made up, apart from the fact that they definitely broke into that particular Lloyd's Bank on the corner of Baker Street, which, funny enough, I walked past the other day, pointing it out to a friend, says I filmed on that roof, which is the Globe pub opposite, doing the lookout stuff. And also my character, the lookout, was not necessarily called Eddie and was not necessarily had the backstory that my character had and the story that you find out that he gets kidnapped in the film. But there was definitely a guy on that roof or a roof recording, because a radio ham heard somebody saying lines to the effect of what I say in the movie. So my character is actually the only character that is actually a genuine person who was involved in that raid, in that bank robbery. So to answer your question, it could be anything. I mean, I'm sure. So, fun fact, when I got the job, it wasn't called the bank job. It was called D Notice. That was the working title, I suppose, but it was called D Notice. And if you want to look at what a D Notice is, it's some sort of government
Embargo.
Yeah, it's an embargo that's put together by the government to say that this has, because I think when the bank robbery happened, it was all over the press for about 24 hours. The bank had been robbed. There was all this stuff had been stolen, and then suddenly it all stopped. And I think because the government stepped in and there was stuff that was in that safety deposit box that they obviously got to, that they didn't want people knowing about, and they probably needed to shut that down quickly. So yeah, it could have been anything. It could have been some sort of X-file. It could have been something to do with the royal family. It could have been something to do with some scandal to do with classified documents. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll find out.
Was this based on a true event?
Yeah, look it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, so the true event, the Baker Street bank robbery in 1970, which
71.
they acquired the lease to a shop a few doors down, and they drilled in the floor and they went under and they came up into the safety deposit box of the particular bank when it was shut, and nobody knew it because this was pre-high tech.
Interesting.
And they cleared it out, and it was a safety deposit, proper safe that people couldn't get into. And, you know, there's a big kind of scandal. And that's what this whole movie's about, is what was in that box. And that these brilliant writers, they wrote this brilliant script that was the guys that wrote Porridge, very famous TV show, amongst other things, Ian LaFrenne and Dick Clements, I think. They wrote the screenplay for this. And they've been trying to get it off the ground for years, apparently. And it got picked up. Jason Statham was involved, and a various other cast of supporting actors, including myself and people like Danny Mays and David Suchet and Steve Campbell-Moore, Keely Hawes, Saffron Burrows.
Yeah, you got beat by David Suchet of all people.
Yeah.
God, talk about legend.
It was a great cast, and I had a really nice time filming it, because it was my first sort of, did Flyboys, and that was an amazing experience, but kind of that was more an observational experience, because I didn't really have much to do in it. I was just there as part of one of the boys who had the odd line here and there. Whereas the bank job, I had a bit of an arc to play and some cool scenes, and got to work with some good actors and a great director, and yeah, I had a really nice time. So yeah, it was good fun. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, you're the character was who we were all rooting for, because when he got kidnapped, I remember watching it for the first time. Like, no, not Eddie, because he was that adorable kid that was working at the mechanic. Like, he could tell that he's gotten mixed up. He shouldn't have got mixed up, which is also kind of the theme of our house. But okay, I'm going to move it along. Those boxes will be opened in 2071. So please, may I still be alive? Please, may I still be alive to know. Now, one last thing I want to throw in there, because I always notice mistakes in films, and I always notice this one in The Bank Job. There's one shot where you see the back lot set, and you can see trees very, very clearly in the windows. But when you're on the roof and we see the wide shots, there is no trees there. There is only buildings there. So it always makes me laugh that you can see very, very clearly there are trees there.
Right. Okay. So that's a shot on me, is it? Is that a kind of
When you're up on the roof, we see the sort of long shot, and we can see here's the bank on this side, and over this side there's buildings. But when we see the backlot set, which they built, right, and they've shot it from a certain angle, you can see very clearly there are no buildings, there are only trees on the other side.
I see. Yeah, they did. That's interesting. I'll have to have a look at that. The things you noticed, but yeah, they definitely did build a backlot. It was all very kind of They get the POV of me, and then they turn it around, and then I remember standing on some kind of scaffolding on a platform with a mock-up wall, and they shot over my shoulder with the cars kind of pulling up and down. They built the whole thing. It was really cool set.
I love filming. I love backlot set. Anyways, speaking of mistakes, we're going to move on to the metal now. Have you had much experience with metal, heavy metal, glam metal?
Not really. I mean, I do like to think that I listen to everything, and I'm open to everything. I've certainly listened to some heavy metal music in my time. A really good friend of mine likes it a lot. A couple of my friends really like it a lot, and occasionally go and see, the big bands and other bands. They certainly go and see Metallica and people like that. But yeah, it's been interesting to listen to this, and I found out some interesting information about these boys as well, and where they're from. They're actually from Newport in South Wales, which is where my wife is from. And
that was an accident. I'll get to that soon.
Yeah. And I looked at who they are, and one of them is called Daniel Pugsley. Now, my wife knows a Pugsley, knows a few. There's a family of Pugsleys that she knows from Newport and South Wales and that area, so she probably knows that they're probably connected to those people. Wow. It's that's really cool. And what's interesting is when you told me about them, you said they're a kind of ska metal band, whereas I was listening to it, having been involved in a ska musical, which maybe we'll talk about in a minute. I was more like, it's not really ska, it's more reggae, and that's what they call themselves, having Skindred fused heavy metal, reggae, punk, hip hop. And that's what I was getting from it. The influences was hip hop, and to be really specific.
We'll blame Spotify because I Spotify search ska metal just to see if there would be, to see.
Well, I'm sure they cover that as well, because why wouldn't they?
Yeah, I'll get to my review in a second, but I actually did get elements of ska from it. Now, Steve.
Yeah, so if you could pick your ultimate, most over-the-top rock star rider, what would you put in it? What is something fun, obnoxious, absurd that you could put in your contract that the powers that be have to do it?
Opulence. Extravagance.
I think that I would, not that I'd want my family with me, that they'd be able to fly me home at the weekends first class so that I get the best of both worlds.
Anywhere in the world, yeah.
Anywhere in the world, that I get the best of both worlds. If I'm traveling for 24 hours to the other side of the world, let's say, at least I'm having a rest and I'm laid out first class, and then I can be home for the weekend, and then the worst thing that's going to happen is I just have to travel first class again. And then I get the weekend at home, and it would have to be that I fly home, that I work 3 days a week, 4 days a week. I get a good 2 days at home. That would be cool, wouldn't it? To be able to go, well, I'm going to go back to Australia this week, and I'll see you next weekend.
Set your hours,
or LA or wherever it is. Because I think at first...
that would work.
Some people get to set their hours, and they will only work a certain amount of days.
Well, they do, and I know that proper, successful rock star, pop stars, famous people have their own airplanes, and it's like literally they're on a flight socializing with their friends and their teams. For people flying from LA to premieres in London and Sydney and wherever it is, and do the gig, get back in the car, they're back on the tarmac, and they take off, and within 24 hours, they're back in the country again. It would be like me popping into London on the train, which is an hour commute for me,
That's got to be exhausting.
But this is what I'm trying to say, is that wouldn't it be nice to be able to make it not exhausting, so that you are just literally chilling and then just hopping in and doing your thing and work.
Yeah. Have that written specifically to say you're first class, no lines, no general population.
Yeah.
Walk you straight to your private plane.
And that's what I've heard happens when, whoever it is, Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, when they fly in for a premiere in Leicester Square, they fly into Heathrow on their private jet, they helicopter into the heliport, which is wherever that is closest to the West End, and they're 20 minutes in their car, so it takes 10 minutes to get from Heathrow to the thing, from their helicopter, so it's a 2-minute car ride, heliport, 20 minutes to Leicester Square. So they're in Leicester Square within the hour of landing, doing the job. They do the premiere, and then they get back on the plane, and within an hour they're back. So they're in town for 3 hours, and then they fly back to LA. So they set off first thing in the morning. They're back by the end of the night. It's a day's work, but most of the time they're sitting, chilling, reading scripts or talking to their friends or their entourage. To answer your question, that's what I would want, the way to do it.
That sounds like a wonderful life, actually.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. I'll tell you, I've cruised back from America. That was pretty much first class, but it just took a long time. Now, this week, I really wanted to cover Our House as the musical because I love Madness and I'd always wanted to see it. So to balance that out, I went looking for a metal album that would be a complete, fully realized version of a musical. And I did find a couple. One we couldn't do on this episode because I'm hopefully getting guests from that musical coming up soon. I left one particular one I was listening to. I thought this is pretty good. And I thought I'll check out this band. And then I read the description and it's some dude who literally creates AI music. So I'm like, shit. So that's screwed up. That's why I couldn't pinpoint a musical yet because I'm still I'm going through everything and I'm trying to work out what would balance this out. What would be the good thing to do? So I'm like, okay, ska metal on Spotify. And I came up with Skindred. So I picked their album Roots Rock Riot. When I first chose Skindred, it was after the disaster wanting to cover Our House with metal or for the musical, but I was torn between Bounce, Oliver, Our House, but with the metal to be a metal version of a musical. Anyways, unnecessary recap aside, I pressed play on Roots Rock Riot, not knowing if I should expect something rocking or something to leave me feeling rooted. Well, that's an Aussie joke. That means left me fucked, basically. Much like how I entered Our House. And with the opening titular track, I immediately wondered if maybe I should have picked Oliver. But as the thought left my brain, the words Oliver Twist appeared in the lyrics, and I was left shooketh. Is this a sign? Kicking off immediately with a new metal focus, my stomach turned. But I kept going despite that being my funeral. Trouble lived up to its name by reminding me slightly of Limp Bizkit, but lead vocalist Benji Webby's voice sounds 100% more authentic. But I'm ready for the ska to show itself. And luckily, once we hit Rat Race, a rock-steady beat shines through, with a hooky chorus to make you go wah wah. It's hard, fast, and scarring. State of Emergency also comes to the rescue with a clear reggae beat, complemented by a more skater punk feel. Fun without feeling laboured like the first two tracks were. But this is England. Well, Wales. Do they call 911 there? Anyways, Alright feels like a love song. Alright, whatever. With some vocal record scratches, I guess it lives up to its name. Destroy the Dance Floor turns up the metal, still with a West Indies flavour, but feels more catered to the emos, more than the Rude Boys. But then Rude Boy for Life puts me right in my place, doesn't it? But that's entitled more, because with a synthesized music rhythm, I admit it runs the gamut of nu metal before finally bringing in ska elements. It does feel a bit too radio-friendly. Not bad, just a bit more sedated than the Rat Race. Killing Me continues that trend, but at various points reminds me of Kelly Clarkson's third album, My December. Hopefully that didn't make you spit out your poison, unlike Spit Out Your Poison, which lives up to its name by feeling like the hardest song yet on this album. The final few tracks start to cause a riot by going through various emotions, namely anger, before easing up and ease up. But it's the title, Choices and Decisions, that makes me laugh. Maybe I should have picked Our House instead. Was this my sliding doors moment? Because somehow we still ended up with Madness. 4 stars. Too much metal, not enough ska and reggae, but I absolutely love this. I thought this was crazy. This was madness. This was weird. What do you think, Michael?
This album of Skindred, I was really interested with it. I think I agree with you. When you talk about radio friendly, you mean it's a bit more kind of accessible? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I agree with you. It's still very rocky, very as I would describe it. But some of the vocals, I think, made it quite accessible. What I'm wondering is what came first, the heavy metal rock or the ska or the reggae hip hop influence? Did they write? Because I could hear these songs as a hip hop song or a reggae song with an injection of heavy rock. So I'm wondering, did somebody kind of come up with a kind of dum 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 da 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 da, that kind of reggae feel first, write a song, and then go, right, now let's rock it up, let's speed it up, let's add the guitars, let's get the drums in, let's change the vocals up a bit? Or was it the other way around? Did they go, let's come up with a rock song, these are the lyrics, and now let's sing it with a reggae feel to it? So that's what I kept thinking all the way through it. How was this? What was the dominant force here? Reggae reggae, R&B, or rock in terms of the conception of this music and this band? Those are my questions. But when you're coming up with a vibe, with a riff, with a melody, with a kind of round of where you're going with this story, with the story of the song, whatever it is, what comes first musically? Do you start on a piano and come up with a melody? Do you start with a guitar and then you go, oh, well, now sing it? Or does it come together at the same time? What I find interesting is, I suppose with a lot of rock, and you can probably help me with this, is it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Violent in the way that the language is used, and very angry and very kind of, like Roots Rock Riot being the opening song, Trouble, which it's negative. Trouble means negativity. Retrace, Skate of Emergency, All Right. I remember All Right was a bit lighter as a song. Destroy the Dance Floor, Rude Boy for Life, Killing Me. And I found some of the songs were they were kind of breakup songs, some of them as well, which made me feel, some of these songs you could slow the beat down, get rid of the guitars and turn them into more of a kind of, which is maybe where you're kind of leaning into your Kelly Clarkson feel with it. You could get a lighter rock singer like a Kelly Clarkson or a female voice and remove the kind of rah, 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 rah vocals and actually turn it into quite a catchy pop tune.
Melodic song. Yeah.
And would that be known as more of a punk rock, more of a kind of, in that Avril Lavigne kind of American Idiot feel going in that way? Because that's the thing with Green Day and people. I mean, I'm a big fan of Green Day and those are the kind of lighter rock. I love American Idiot, the musical, which was a musical adaptation of that album, which is effectively like a weird kind of song cycle opera on stage. I saw it in New York when it was first done. It was wonderful. And it's heavy, some of that music, for the palette of a lighter Broadway tuned ear to hear, a Sondheim or a Poppy 6 or a whatever it is that a Rent. I can see Rent in the background. Rent's rocky. Jesus Christ Superstar is rocky, but this is heavy rock. And that's what I'm interested in, is what, Cause a Riot, Choices and Decisions, these kind of lyrics. And I'm just looking at some of the lyrics here, what we've got, these lyrics. Roots Rock Riot, Roots Rock, so much blood spilt on the dance floor. Just like Oliver Twist, you're begging for more. Raw to the maximum, broke down the law. Sweat and claret increase you for sure. It's rooted, that's rooted in literature.
Poetry, and it's angry and it speaks of the oppressive, obviously, but in such a poetic way.
Yeah, it's always good to pull it apart, and it's been interesting to listen to it, and I listened to it on a nice dog walk yesterday when I was sort of trying to relax, and I was like, wow, okay, I've got to put my head into this gear to kind of, and it was great. It was really good fun to listen to, and I'm thrilled that, I had no idea who these guys were, and I've just looked at where they're from, like I say, and they're from Newport in South Wales, around the corner from where my wife grew up. I was there last week, so it's weird. Like, you could have picked anybody from all over the world, and that's one of the towns that I go to more than any other town in the country. So yeah.
Oh wow. I fancy that.
Well, Kelly Clarkson allusions aside, this was a confusing listen for me for a lot of the reasons you guys have already stated. You've got the powerhouse riffs and beats typical of metal, but then on the other hand, you've got this light, catchy, and serene vocals in a reggae style, and it felt very tonally confused for me. And in the line of what Michael was mentioning with the pop punk scene of, say, the 2000s or the 90s, I actually made some notes comparing it to Sublime, because I think Sublime merged these different genres a little better, a little more authentically in the lyrics.
I don't know if I've done them or not.
Well, they're not a metal band. They are very much a California rock ska that dipped a lot into reggae. Their lead singer died in the 90s, heroin, I think. I sampled out the song of State of Emergency as an example where the music suggests one thing, the vocals and the lyrics suggest something entirely different, and the way it's portrayed, I really wasn't sure how I was supposed to feel. Listen to this. However, I did enjoy it, which is also strange.
Oh.
Yeah, throughout all the confusion, I was bopping my head, I was tapping my toes. Excellent drumming. Really enjoyed the drummer. Could have used some more guitar solos. I would have liked to hear a little bit of shredding in there. That I think that was kind of missing. But I was tapping my feet and bopping my head, but in a very confused way.
Oh wow. I love this. There was too much new metal for me. New metal, not new metal. I don't want to get slaughtered on the social medias. I heard that there was some ska and there wasn't full on. There was horns. In one song there was horns, but there was definitely rock steady and reggae all the way through it. Well, not all the way through for the most part. And they for me were the stronger moments.
I went in blind. I didn't know anything about these guys. I didn't know the ska element. I didn't know anything. It was just like, oh, reggae. That's weird.
This was literally a random pick. It was a random pick, Stephen. It ends up being Caroline's hometown, and it ends up having Oliver Twist literally in the first lyrics of the first song, which was one of the musicals I was tossing up doing because you don't know that. And that was Michael's West End debut. So it was all these things of like, is this a serendipitous thing? Like, this was the album we were meant to do.
Yeah.
Obviously, this was the one because it was a bit weird.
Just to comment on the vocals as well, one more thing I want to say is you get the kind of juxtaposition between the guy, rah, rah, that kind of rah-rah thing that I do, but then you also got quite, brilliant reggae vocal R&B vocals as well that came in. There were some songs that lent more that way, and it was quite interesting to see how that worked as a concept, really, that you've got somebody who's obviously an incredible singer singing the kind of R&B vocals. I could easily hear him singing musical theatre rock, the other guy that was singing. It was great. It was interesting to hear.
Oh, I thought it was the same guy.
Maybe it was the same guy then. But if he is, I don't know how he just flips between the two without hurting his voice. That's what I was thinking.
True, yeah. That's got to be difficult.
Yeah, that's why I thought I couldn't do that. That's why I was wondering who it was, if it's the same guy. Maybe it was.
Possibly, because there are a band we're going to be doing, Devil's Skin. Their female singer, Jenny, she does both the unclean and the clean vocals.
Right.
So it is something I'm used to hearing.
On different days.
Well, yeah, I'm guessing.
Different weeks.
Yeah. Just has a hell of a lot of water and soothers between each session, I tell you that. So I'm used to hearing that, though. I'm used to hearing the juxtaposition of the clean and the unclean. I'm not used to hearing it with Caribbean accent or...
No, it was interesting to hear.
It's obviously, it's his background. So, yeah, it was a different approach to it. And it would have got a few more stars had there been a bit less metal and more ska, more horns. They were exciting when they came in. But yes, well, anyways, what would we give it out of 5 then? And I'll move us along because we're running over.
I mean, I'm giving it out of 5 as a non-aficionado of this world. Obviously, that's why I'm on this podcast. I would give it a 4 out of 5.
I lean more towards a 3. I'd like to hear more from them to see where they come from and where they've evolved, but it's definitely worth a 3.
Yeah, because this is their sophomore album. So if we're impressed with this one, who knows what their debut was like or as they got better. But it looks like we're all for Skindred. Ew. I'm going to go to an ad break. I've just made that very awkward. From the producers of Thrash and Treasure, Around the World in 80 Plays, starring the adorable Lizzie B and Alfie Parker, and featuring the star of the show, Dolly the dog, they'll take you for a trip around the UK, exploring the rich arts and cultural history. But here is a sneak peek.
This week we're in Edinburgh, Scotland. Every theatre really has ghosts, but we're in Edinburgh. Edinburgh's known for its spooky ghosts. So why don't you...
Yeah, I've done my research, and I might have had an experience of my own.
Oh.
Right, so I am a true believer. Alfie is definitely more sceptical, but I believe in ghosts wholeheartedly. Like, I love watching paranormal programs. We watch a lot of celebrity ghost hunters. I just love it. I just kind of think, like, what's the point in not believing?
Yeah, my issue, right, I want to believe that there is something there. I think ghosts is a nice idea.
As long as they're nice ghosts.
Yeah, as long as they're not throwing things around. Like, no, because they grab me legs and go, bleh. All of that.
That's never happened to you, has it?
No, but you hear stories of them being like, get out of my house, and they're rattling everything and all of that stuff, and it's just a bit...
Oh, please. Right, so anyway, theatre ghosts is like a massive thing. So I'd say probably every theatre in the world has a ghost.
Yeah.
But with Edinburgh being such a historical place, the Festival Theatre actually has 3 ghosts. And I had an experience with one of them, which I'll talk about later.
We had a brief experience.
Don't spoil it, okay?
Yeah, sorry.
Right, I'm going to talk to you about these ghosts. So the first one, the most famous ghost at the Edinburgh Festival Theatre is called the Great Lafayette. Lafayette? Hamilton reference for you. That's not who it is, but he's called the Great Lafayette. One of the most celebrated illusionists of the early 20th century. Do you know what an illusionist is, Alfie?
Yes, kind of like disappearing in smoke and, swords and
Yeah.
it's like a branch of magician, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So kind of like Houdini.
Yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to say Houdini, but yeah.
Cool. He was the highest paid entertainer in theatre at the time.
When was this?
In the early 20th century. Do you
Okay.
know when that was?
Do I know when that was?
Yeah, what year are we sort of talking there? Early 20th century?
1920 something?
Earlier. But,
Okay.
yeah.
The 1900s.
Yeah, brilliant.
Right.
Well done. This is going quite well.
I've got my GCSEs.
And apparently he was a very lavish performer. And so that brought the audiences in, which kind of justify that he was getting paid all this money.
Right.
So, spring of 1911, he was performing at the Edinburgh Festival Theatre, and he did his finale, which was called The Lion's Bride. And what he did in The Lion's Bride is he would swap places with a lion live on stage.
I mean, you are asking for trouble, though.
No, see, this is the thing. It's not that went wrong.
Oh, right. Okay.
So this Lion's Bride thing happened successfully in an out of home.
Anyways, we're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Steve, and we're on lookout for the... Am I on the right? No, I'm on the wrong one. We're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, and I'm not changing the names to protect the guilty. That's Steve, and we're joined by a sinner, candy-coated. To all his friends, he always seems to be Michael Jibson.
Michael, you've performed in many old theaters around the UK. Have you ever seen a theater ghost?
Ooh, cue the music.
I haven't, no.
What?
And I think I used to think that I would, and I used to think I believed in all that, and I think now I am a non-believer in all that kind of stuff. And I think they are definitely spooky old places with a lot of history and a lot of phantoms, and ghosts probably do walk those backstages and auditoriums and cupboards and corridors and stuff. But I just don't know. I think I would have seen something by now.
Do they do the ghost light thing on the stage in the UK?
Yeah,
they do it everywhere. Yeah, that's a thing.
they do it in Australia too. Yeah.
I didn't know if that was a US thing. I just learned about it recently with my son on stage and stuff. So that was kind of a neat thing I learned about.
Yeah, that's it. Anyways, now before we move on to the musical, I'm a longtime Madness fan. As I said, they're one of my absolute favorite bands. But Our House had always eluded me until this week, but I finally watched it, and I have to say I didn't like it. I fucking loved it. I was so surprised. No, literally, I didn't have very high expectations, I'm going to be honest, because it's a jukebox musical.
Yeah.
Even though it won Best Musical, so did Return to Forbidden Planet, which isn't the best, let's face it. And that's a jukebox musical as well.
Who, ironically, the musical director of Our House was in Return to the Forbidden Planet.
All due love and respect. Loved Our House. I loved what they did with it. From the very start, I was cackling because, oh my God, you're in there buying condoms to House of Fun, and the lyrics were so perfect just the whole way. Yeah, well done. I so disappointed I hadn't seen it earlier. I laughed and I even cried at the end. I don't want to spoil it for anybody what happens there, but
it's a cool thing, and I mean, apart from that, it's very cool that it was actually filmed, and that you and whoever else it is for me gets to see what we did when I was in it. When I was 23 years ago this year it is that I was in that show, and it was my first job, very important part of my life and career, and a big start for me, and I got to play that incredible role, and I don't think I'll ever play a role like that ever again, and I certainly haven't. That amount of emotions to play and
running around and quick changes.
Running around and just being exhausted and dialogue and singing and also to be in such a wonderful production. And I mean, even the face of the West End's changed these days. I mean, which is a whole other podcast about the way things are cast now, and the producers and the money that's made and the tickets that are sold, and ticket prices, all that kind of stuff, which is really dull and boring, and celebrities and everything that puts normal jobbing actors. I don't think I would have got that part today, if I'm going to be honest. I think they would have given it to somebody else who probably had a lot more followers on Instagram or something stupid like that. So so it was a wonderful, wonderful thing, and the fact that they filmed it, and I'm really glad you saw it and that you liked it, because it's a really smart, intelligent piece of theatre, apart from anything else. That happens to be the back catalogue of that brilliant band, and the writing of Tim Firth, and directed by Matthew Warchus, who already was a very established theatre director of wonderful plays and theatre even at a very young age, and then did Our House, and we won the award for that, and then he went on to do things like Matilda, and he is currently the outgoing artistic director of the Old Vic in London.
Yep.
And he is doing a great job there. And it was a really cool thing for me to be a part of. So I'm glad you saw it.
Yes. No, genuinely, I loved it. I've watched it twice already, literally in 24 hours.
Wow.
After it finished the first time, I said, I hate myself like that because I don't want to like jukebox musicals because I know that this is the antithesis of what we're doing in theater, with a composer and a lyricist and people workshopping a show and the storyline. And so many of these jukebox musicals are slapped together. They really are. They're just like, what are the hit songs?
I agree. And unfortunately, Our House
wasn't.
Its Achilles heel is that it wasn't that. And it's given other people the confidence to think they can do it too. And most of them get it wrong. And it was incredibly intelligent, woven together. It's a testament to actually how brilliant those songs are that Madness wrote, and how within themselves they're their own little pieces of storytelling that move forward plot. And good morning miss, can I help you son, is dialogue. It's as simple as that. Father wears his Sunday best. Mother's tired, she needs a rest. The kids are playing up downstairs. That's the opening lyric of Our House. That's information. It's not just some lyric about look at the moon or I feel shit about life. It's information. The sun and the rain. I feel amazing. It's raining again. I'm hearing it pitter patter down. All that kind of stuff. It's, it must be love. I never thought I'd miss you half as much as I do is
technically not their song. Technically not their song, but they elevated it. We're not going to steal that from a black man.
Yeah, from Lavi Cyprus, I think his name was, who wrote it I think it was originally on a ukulele or something like that, and a huge hit before it was the hit with them. But anyway, they elevated it. And I mean, for anybody who hasn't seen the production of Our House and every production that's ever been done since, of which I've been to see a few of them, they all do what we did in it, which was that they directed it in that brilliant way that Matthew, and to be fair, Tim Firth had it in the writing was, this is what happens. You sing the verse whilst he's continuing with the dialogue, and it's like he's not listening to you, and you're in a kind of stupor, just looking at him, thinking about him and what you're thinking the audience are hearing through the lyrics of the song. And then we flip it right. It was just so beautifully done. And I remember the moments I could hear the joy coming from the audience when we used to sing that song, because, and it sounds really silly, but when it flipped back over to me, you could hear people laugh because they were like, that's brilliant. It was so lovely to see such a clever piece of direction that the audience completely were in on.
And we're able to, because My Girl earlier, where he comes in, my girl's mad at me and the other one's talking, and
which is like a sitcom.
Yeah, basically. So how many quick changes did you have?
29 it was, and we set a world record.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which was cool. So I've got the world record in my toilet over there on the wall. But yeah, it was cool. And then I think maybe other people have sort of decided that they've broken it as well. But they got like an extra shirt or something that they did. But we spent months working out incredibly technical costume changes and stuff that were magical and things like that. And then they sort of, other people have done it in I'm sure other people have broken it, but whatever.
I want to say 79 for Madonna in Evita.
But that's a movie. This was all in one night.
Yeah, it was all in one night. I've got more to talk about it later, obviously, because yes, we're going to move it on though to the musical, which I finally narrowed it down to Bugsy Malone, which I auditioned for in 1996. I found this. This is why I was in my cupboard.
That's the
audition notice we got. The committee would like to thank.
What year was this?
1996.
Well, that was the year I did it. That production that I did in 97, which transferred to the West End, we started it in 96, and then it transferred to the West End.
Oh, you beat me to it.
Yeah.
Damn it, you beat me to Olivier, and I thought I beat you to Bugsy, but I didn't.
It went on for 2 years, that production, and it culminated in this West End run for however many weeks, 60 performances or something that we did it at the Queen's Theatre, now the Sondheim Theatre where Les Mis is on. We started at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and it wasn't professional. It was the National Youth Music Theatre that I was talking about earlier on.
Are you on this cast album?
I am.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
I'm not a particular big part. I'm one of the Fat Sam's gang. So there's a few of us singing that. The solo line I have on it is the famous line at the end of So You Want to Be a Boxer. So you want to be a boxer. Da 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 da. That one in the golden ring. The final line is, oh, let me have him, Joe. That's me. I was the only boy in the cast who had the deep enough voice to do it because my balls had dropped. My voice had broken. So they went, Mike, can you sing this bit?
That's it. Just to move it on to Stephen. This was my first Don't Call Us, We'll Call You. because it does say, due to the overwhelming response, only those successful will be notified by telephone by Friday, 15th of November. So, anyways, Stephen, do you want to jump into your review for Bugsy Malone?
Bugsy Malone. All right. So you sent me the cast album, the 1998 cast album of Bugsy Malone. And to me, this is best described as delightful. It's like if Annie and Newsies got married and Paul Williams was the Reverend. It all meshed in a very delightful way for me. The Prohibition era gangster story with an almost all child cast, charming, spirited, with my own son being a child actor. I just kind of really synced with this and enjoyed it. The music hits me on the Annie side, and then the attitude and spunk and lyrics hit me on the Newsies side. Paul Williams of Muppets fame, for me, love the guy, songwriting legend. It was really neat to listen to something brand new from him in my eyes. I had never heard this before, so it was fun. As soon as it was over, I put it on again because it was just such a fun listen, and it was quick. It wasn't like 3 hours long here. This was actually a fairly quick cast album. But the highlight for me was actually the orchestration. The 1920s trad jazz style. This is something that you would hear tonight in the Preservation Hall in New Orleans. And that is right there in my sweet spot of one of my favorite genres of music. So the opening overture and the exit music track over the end, those are already in my personal instrumental playlist.
That's cool.
I enjoyed those tracks quite a bit.
We're changing lives on this show. Look at that.
But overall, to finish up quickly, good music, easy to follow with just the audio. Obviously, I don't have the stage show in front of me, so I was able to follow the story.
I sent you the movie. And I said to
you did.
Reed has to watch this.
And we will.
So Reed, if you're listening, you have to watch this movie because you know he's going to want to do this show. He's going to be on every producer's back. And good, let's get it done in America. Sorry, shutting up, it's yours.
I know, it's never, ironically, it's never.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm all for it.
It's never done in, I mean, I think it may well have been done, but it's not an American, it's like Bye Bye Birdie is never done over here, or, you know, the shows that they know that you guys just do every year. Like we do Oliver at school, you do Bye Bye Birdie, we do Bugsy Malone, you do Annie. I mean, we do Annie as well, but there's shows, you know, like there's a play within the play in Stranger Things, sorry to hark back to that.
Oh, spoilers.
That we do called The Dark of the Moon, which is quite a famous play that's done in schools in the UK, in the US apparently. Like we had no idea what this play is, and the writer Kate was like, yeah, we do this play all the time in theater class, and it's like, oh right, okay. So yeah. So that's interesting.
It came up with Transformers, Dark of the Moon.
I mean, I've never even heard of Dark.
Here we
It's a
go.
Tom Petty song to me.
There's a Broadway play called that.
It was done on Broadway, but it's done a lot in schools because it's about a witch boy and a girl, and they fall in love or something. Anyway, we did it as a play.
Well, has Our House ever come to the US? I mean, I don't think I've seen that.
Certainly not professionally. It may well have been done in a provincial theatre. I don't know. I'll have to find out. I'll have to speak to Tim, though. Now, what I was going to say was, in terms of, sorry to interject on your review, what's really interesting about you getting a thrill out of the instrumental and the orchestrations is the guy who did the orchestrations for our adaptation of this album that you've listened to of Bugsy Malone. Because ours is this album that you've listened to is the only theatrical recording, I think. I think there may be another one, but it was a bit more loyal to the movie because originally it was a movie. It was made as a movie.
A studio cast recording, I think it is.
Yeah, and Alan Parker, who directed the movie, who was a very famous British movie director.
Yeah, love Alan Parker, yeah.
It was his baby. And he didn't like our production of Bugsy Malone. He thought it was too theatrical, too show. Yeah, he didn't like it at all. I can say this now because the guy's not with us, unfortunately. He came to see it and he left at the interval, famously. And our artistic director of the company chased him down the street, said, "Where are you going?" He says, "I can't sit through any more of it." He hated it. Yet we were sold out when we transferred to the West End and this production of it. We got better reviews than the new production of Chicago, which had just opened in the West End, which was the big Broadway revival that happened in the 90s that had just opened in the West End. We got better reviews. We were offered to extend, but Alan Parker put a stop to it because it didn't fit within the remit of what his quite dark movie was.
Yeah, it's very dark.
And he didn't see it as, we'd made it too cheesy in his eyes, and we'd added music to it and added, so for example, that overture that you speak of and the play out at the end, that was so John Pearson, who was our musical director, who is actually a school teacher, science teacher, but was one of the musical directors of the National Youth Music Theatre, an incredibly gifted and talented orchestrator and musical director with brass band. His thing was brass bands and stuff. So that's why you hear all this brass and all this kind of with all hi-hats and kind of.
I love that stuff.
That's great. That's what you're saying. And that was his world. And then cutting into, saxophone solo, all that kind of stuff. And I credit that to John Pearson, who did a brilliant job. So I'm really pleased you picked that out.
Just from an atmospheric perspective, it sets you in that 1920s to 1940s America mood. That's the jazz that puts you there.
Yeah, and when we recorded it at Abbey Road Studios, which is really cool because I was a teenager, and we went to Abbey Road Studios where the Beatles recorded all their albums and all that kind of stuff, and we recorded it in the big famous room where one of the big famous recording studios with a huge, bigger band. When we did it in the production, it was all children in the orchestra as well, which was unique and brilliant as well, economically better as well because they didn't have to pay them as much. But then when we recorded the album that you've listened to, they were all proper session players who played. So you got some really high quality musicians coming in and doing those saxophonist solos and trumpet solos and stuff. So it was a really exciting thing for us to record actually as an album. Probably, I haven't recorded, considering I've done so much cool stuff. We didn't record a cast recording of Our House, but we did of Bugsy Malone, and I got to do it at Abbey Road.
We got a pro shot.
We did get a pro shot, but at the time we weren't expecting it to have the legacy that we just thought it was going to be on TV, and it was like DVDs were a thing that some people were using, and that was it. We didn't realize it would end up on YouTube and the wider world of people's bootlegs and things like that.
Yeah, because like when it came out, I was actually in the punk scene, so we were seeing punk and ska bands all the time. Just in terms of Bugsy Malone, it is very dark at the end. This whole happy sing along that we have at the end of it. They're all dead kids. That's the afterlife.
He's a gangster.
That's the afterlife. Let's face it. There's a massacre at the end of that.
That's the kind of irony of the whole. Maybe that's why it doesn't work in the US because of your gun laws and because of gun rights and things like that. The whole thing about Bugsy Malone is every time somebody gets machine gunned, it's custard pies come out of the guns. Yeah. And it splurges people, and so the kids just freeze, and there is no blood and guts. There's no violence in it, and I don't know. I mean, you're an American. What the response would be to an American audience? Like, what they would be like. Well, what does this mean? Whereas in the UK, there's a rule: can't own a gun unless you have license upon license upon license.
I think it would be both from a narrative and a comedic perspective gold here.
Good.
The gangster genre is so fully romanticized here.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, from The Godfather to The Untouchables and just everything on that whole genre. You could make up random dude gangster 4 and make a story out of him, and it would sell completely. And then you throw kids in there, talking tough and singing tough in that, add that adorable factor. And then, like you said, with the way they perpetuate their guns over there, I think it would completely work here, especially today. Yeah. People enjoy that sort of thing and are allowed to say they enjoy it now. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, you couldn't really say, hey, I enjoy that kind of thing. But now with the success of like Wicked and other things, people are saying, yeah, I actually enjoy these things in various different ways.
And it would be an interesting conversation to have, hypothetically, if somebody was to pitch, let's do Bugsy Malone on a professional stage or revive the movie or redo the movie or whatever it would be. How would you hypothetically pitch it? I mean, I don't know what that answer is and how they would do it. I mean, it would be a wonderful Broadway show for a cast full of children, young people under 15, 16. I was the oldest one in the cast and I was 16. I was turning 17. There were about 6 of us that were 17, 16 in it, and everybody else was, majority of the age was sort of 12, 13, 14, down to like the youngest were 11, 10, and it was 2 casts of kids because of, you can't work kids every day. So we alternated weeks, I think. And then the 6 of us that were 16 had a full adult license to work, as it were. Yep. And so we were in every show. And what an incredible thing to see on Broadway or in an American theatre. I'd love to, if any theatre people out here are listening and looking for a show for kids, I mean, it's hard producing shows with kids in because it becomes expensive and all that kind of stuff. But
that's why things like Matilda, as popular as they were, they don't last long because it is
because
the kids.
You've got the logistics of dealing with the administration of looking after the kids. But no, I think if there are any people out there in the States who are listening to this, who are looking for a musical for kids to do, check out Bugsy Malone, the UK British version of it, and go out there and build your cars with
pedals,
with pedals, and get the splurge guns and get your local engineers to design a splurge gun that fire some custard pies at people, and get the kids dressed as gangsters and moles, dancing around and being stupid, because it's basically a musical comedy with some great tunes. I mean, every song is a banger. My Name is Tallulah, Tomorrow, Bugsy Malone title song, Fat Sam's Grand Slam, Down and Out. I mean, we've got some different songs that we composed. So you're listening to the album that we did. So there's some newly written songs. This was the other thing that Alan Parker didn't like. We wrote a number for Dandy Dan. That's why they call him Dandy, which is and that was, he hated it. We also wrote an end of Act One, which was a kind of, you gave a little love and it all comes back to you. Which is great. And that was John Pearson wrote that as a kind of variation of other tunes in the show. If I'm right in saying this, I don't think he actually composed anything new. He took other tunes and expanded on them and turned them into other songs in the show, which is very, very smart. But Alan Parker didn't like it. Sorry, Alan. I disagree with you. You were a bit of a miserable old git on that one. You should have let us run with it because here's the thing. One of the offers we had, apart from it extending in the West End, was to bring it to Australia.
Well, funnily enough, on Friday, 22nd of November, 1996, in the primary school newsletter, we got it, and it said, congratulations to Aaron Ware, who recently auditioned for a role in Bugsy Malone and was fortunate enough to be one of the 50 children cast.
Wasn't our production.
No, it was one cast. We did every show in our one, but then again, we weren't on the West End, and it wasn't 8 shows a week, literally just 14 shows. But I did that in May 1997, and I found the poster for it, and I also found the cast list with everyone's addresses and phone numbers on it.
Yeah, that old. We had one of those. That's how it used to be.
And this is the cast in a newspaper.
Yeah, we did all those shots. I mean, look at that. Kids dressed as gangsters and moles in the 1920s and 30s. Yeah. It's great. In Prohibition America, it's brilliant.
It's adorable.
It is. I've got some photos of me, but I'm not in that photo there. I also found the running sheet for Act 1.
Wow, you've kept all your stuff.
Yeah, this was all my mum kept it all, and sort of I went looking through it all. Now, we didn't actually use splurge guns because it was a community theatre, so budget-wise, obviously, but being a community theatre means we don't have like a whole laundry down in the basement. So having a matinee and an evening show, we used silly string for our guns.
Oh, okay.
But in the film, actually, they couldn't quite get the guns to work. So that's why when you watch it, you'll notice there are all these jump cuts when they shoot the guns to when they cut to the people getting splurged in the face. When they shoot the guns, it's actually ping pong balls being shot out. They're not actual splurge, so it's completely different. And then at the end, we should have had the big massacre thing that goes on. I shouldn't spoil it for you, but too late. We didn't do it at all.
Just skip the massacre?
We skipped it, and we just went straight into the sing-along. So that was disappointing, but it was a cast of 50 children, and the theatre was 200 years old when we were there.
Oh, wow.
So we're running around this old building that was falling apart already. So, but it was a great experience. I absolutely loved doing it, and I should do it in America.
It really tied into New Orleans to me, that sound, and that hits me. Yeah, I got married in New Orleans. I love that city.
Oh, wow. The movie, actually, the vocals are adults. They're not the kids singing, so it's very different in that respect. So, yeah.
I want to listen to that soundtrack again because I want to pluck out a song that I can get into Reed's repertoire, something that is appropriate for him to...
Tomorrow.
Oh, fuck Tomorrow, man.
Great one.
Is that a Bugsy song, or is that...
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you meant Annie. Tomorrow.
No. You know what? I've never put that connection together in my life. I've seen Annie thousands of times and Bugsy Malone thousands of times. I've never once considered, oh shit, they've both got a song named fucking Tomorrow in it. Oh my God. I've been watching both films for decades.
It's like Santa Fe. I was listening to the Rent soundtrack a while ago, and Reed's like, hey, that's just like Newsies. It's like,
that I put together years ago when Rent was first released, and I first saw it, and I was, looking at all the songs, and I hadn't seen Newsies. I never saw that until, I don't know, about 3 years ago. So Santa Fe I knew was in both. Tomorrow, I have never in my life put that connection. I've never been singing Tomorrow and started singing the other one.
I'll give Tomorrow from Bugsy another listen. But the reason I had that reaction though is because when you're trying to build a kid's known repertoire, he does great on things like World's Greatest Dad, and now he's got the one from Drag and I'm Flying from Peter Pan. But I was trying to find. They're like, oh, he should sing Where Is Love from Oliver. He should sing Tomorrow. I was like, no, those every kid does those.
Yeah, but you do Tomorrow from Bugsy Malone, and because you say Tomorrow and everyone's going to be like, oh. from Bugsy Malone. Oh, okay, what's this?
Yeah, exactly. That's the reaction you want. It's like, oh, it's something different.
Yeah.
He can't handle Santa Fe from Newsies yet, but he'll get there.
So I couldn't pick that out, but I do know Santa Fe from Rent.
I mean, Jeremy Jordan just crushes it in Newsies, so it's beautiful.
We covered it, but I haven't listened to that like I have Rent. There's a video on YouTube, Blue Peter. It's about a 10-minute video, Bugsy Malone.
I'm on that.
Yeah, I watched it. I was looking out for you, but I didn't know what you look like. Obviously,
No, I'm there. I am
You
there
are?
in
Yeah.
the background. I'm sort of one of the tall teenage boys in it.
Yeah, and tomorrow, Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees released a cover of that song because obviously he directed the original West End production. He released a cover of Tomorrow. So if you go to the playlist from this episode with the metal album and Bugsy,
It's there.
I've put it there now. Like a few hours ago, I put it there. So
Okay,
you'll be able
I'll
to
have a
hear
look.
that.
Mickey Dolenz
Mickey
originally
Dolenz.
directed Bugsy.
Yeah, on
Oh.
West End. So
I missed that bit. That's wow.
Yeah, there was a production of it in the West End, like in the 80s, I think, or 90s.
yeah. I also did Oliver in 97 and 98, and I was on the front cover of the local paper for that one. So if you have a look, that's me there.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Now, I showed this to my friend, or our longtime listener, Drew, right? And he looked at this guy here and said Stranger Things to me because apparently
The bowl cut.
yeah, the bowl cut. Our Oliver Twist looked like the kid from Stranger Things when he was younger. But anyways, when it comes to this musical and Steve, it appears that it bugs him alone.
Mhm.
So we're going to go to an ad break. Get it?
Bugs him alone.
Some people appreciate it, I'm sure. G'day listeners, Aaron here. I'm not going to have any bloop news updates this week because unfortunately things happening in the world have taken precedence, and on this show we've had many guests from Los Angeles and some of those guests have had to evacuate, so I just wanted to send a message to them that we're thinking about them. My heart is with them. I've reached out to everybody and I've heard back from pretty much everybody so far, which is a relief, obviously. But I wanted to let our listeners know that you at home, no matter where you are in the world, you can help this situation and donate to the animal shelters around Los Angeles and Southern California, who are now taking in a whole bunch of animals that are displaced. So what I'll do is I'll put a link below to a Newsweek article that lists all the animal shelters that are currently taking in animals. All these bullshit arguments online don't matter. What does matter is that there are innocent lives involved, and much of those are animals. So let's all band together, donate to the animal shelters in Los Angeles and Southern California, and help them out in this incredibly devastating time. So again, to our past guests, I would list everyone, but I would just forget one or two people, and I don't want to forget anybody, but I have reached out to everyone, so everyone knows who they are. And to everyone listening, if you're in Los Angeles or California, my heart is with you as well, and everyone at Thrash and Treasure is thinking of you, because we all know people in that area. Anyways, on that note, back to the episode. We're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Steve, and we're on the lookout for the madness of King George with Olivier Award-winner Michael Jibson. So my favorite question, what's one thing you're terrible at that everybody else can do perfectly well, or should I ask Caroline?
What am I terrible at? I'm not a very good reader.
Yeah.
I'm not, considering words is what I use to create characters and stuff. I'm not a confident reader. I'm not dyslexic. I'm not diagnosed as dyslexic, but I think in this modern age of understanding a bit more about people's brains and neurodiversities and all that kind of stuff, I have a problem reading.
Yeah, focusing.
I can't focus on it. I can. I have to. I find I've learned in my older age, in my sensible wisdom, after being 25, 30 years old, I suppose, when I was a kid, that I need to sort of kind of shut down a certain part of my brain to concentrate. So when I learn lines, for example, I have to be doing something at the same time. I have to be driving, running the line, so that part of my brain that would concentrate on the main focus is occupied, or I need to be walking, or I can't just sit in a quiet room and learn lines because I get distracted and I start mucking around and thinking about other stuff. Same with reading. I cannot sit. And I think because reading, you have to focus on one thing. my brain just wanders, and I can spend an hour, and I think I've only read 3 pages because I've had to go back over everything because I'm reading it, but I'm not listening to what I'm reading, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not a very good sight reader. Like I'm a lot better at it than I used to be, but I get stuck with words. Words go blah, blah, blah in my head, and I can't remember how to spell things. I have a kind of mental block, which I think is something to do with a kind of some sort of dyslexia or whatever the spectrum
I want to make sure my son hears this part.
is. He struggling with it too?
Like I mentioned, he's an actor and he's done the stage, and that's one of the things that he struggles with is just focusing because there's so much around him going on and finding the right thing that clicks for him to narrow down and focus on the lines and do what he needs to do.
But I bet once he's got it, once he's understood that, once he's done the work and he's blocked the scene or whatever you call it, I bet he's rock solid and more solid than anybody. And that's like me. Once I've got it in my system, and once if I've read the thing and actually focused on it, I've read every word and I've understood every word. Whereas my wife or anybody else, they'll go, yeah, I've read that book in a day. And I go, okay, so what happened at this point? And they might go, I can't remember that bit, because their brain is scanning. They're better at that. Whereas I'm picking out every detail. Do you see what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. When he is off book, it's pretty phenomenal how he'll recite, oh no, that's on page 18. Like, oh,
yeah, because that's the same for me. So, this is a trick for him, trick for any actor. For me, if you're that way inclined, is get up and move the thing around. If you're learning lines, that's why I walk. That's why I visualize it. I can't look at it on the page. I have to I record it on this app called Line Learner, and I learn it by listening, by visualizing it and repetition and just list and breaking it down into thoughts and the app is called Line Learner.
Writing that down.
And it's like where is it? It's my favorite app on my phone, Line Learner, and it's a blue app with a little green head, a smaller blue, and then talking to little other heads. And it's changed my life. It's like a dictaphone, but except it breaks down your lines and their lines, and you can mute your lines, so it plays it back in real time with the gaps where your lines would be. And if you forget your line, there's a button to prompt yourself, so you can build the scene, as it were, on your own. And then of course you can run the lines with yourself, walking the dog, or like I do, or getting on a train or commuting, and you're just drilling and running these lines so that when I'm on set or I'm doing a show, I mean, obviously with theatre it's different because you're rehearsing, so you get up and you get time to practice. But with TV and film, it's particularly, you show up and you're expected to know what you're saying and what you're doing, and that can be very nerve-wracking for people who find it hard to learn lines. But I've cracked it with this particular app helping me along the way, because I show up on set and it's the last thing I'm thinking about if I've done that work and I've put the work in, because I know my lines, I know them. It's not a case of I can remember them, I know them. And that's probably the same with your son. He knows them. He knows what he's saying. It's just when he doesn't, he's still working out how to put the jumble together,
Right. No, I've already sent it to my wife, so we're gonna definitely use that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Have a play with it. It's a bit fiddly at first, but once you get the gist of it, go on YouTube and find out how it works. But then I tend to sort of build the scene. So if it's me and you talking, I start at the beginning, I say my line, and then I listen to your line, and then I go back to the beginning. So I go, okay, so my line was, would you like a cup of tea? Your line is, yes, I'd like a cup of tea. So the second line is, how many sugars would you like? How would your sugars like? So I go back to the beginning. Would you like a cup of tea? Yes, please. How many sugars would you like? 3, please. Next line is, would you like milk? So I go back to the beginning. Would you like a cup of tea? Yes, please. How many sugars would you like? 2, please. Would you like... So you see, I'm building the scene.
Right.
And there might be 50 lines in the scene, but by the time you get to the end of it, you've built it like a wall. You may not be exact with every line that you've got, but you'll pretty much know what the scene is. And then basically I keep building on that and just going back to the beginning every time. And every time I go wrong, I go back to the beginning. But if it's a particularly long scene, I go back to a point that I think, well, I'll go from that bit because that's a big change in the scene. So I'm building the scene. And then eventually, if I'm walking the dog, I've done an hour on this thing, or 2 hours, or whatever it is, driving somewhere. I've just drilled this scene 30 times because I keep building it and I know it now. And then I forget about it and I go to bed. And the next day I come to it and I go, shit, I can't remember any of this. But within 5 minutes, I built it again. And it reignites all those memories about the cup of tea and what the next response was because you asked. And then you go, oh, I know. So I'm listening. I'm not learning it by memory. I'm learning it because I'm listening, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So what is your traveling music? What artists and tunes get you through time in the air or on the road? Like, what do you turn on to just relax and tune out?
I listen to whatever is scratching my itch at the time. It could be anything that at the moment, I'm listening to Jacob Collier. If it's a new musical that I've discovered that I'm not necessarily in, that I've just like when Hamilton came out, I was listening to Hamilton, 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 Hamilton. I'd drive for half an hour. I'd listen from there to there on the playlist, whatever it was. I sometimes put a playlist together of songs that I like recently, and I might listen to those. I find that quite cool. In this day and age of Spotify and stuff, I'll often find an artist and I'll just bash out the top 10 songs of their history or whatever. It tends to be whatever inspires me, really. I've always had quite a lot of turnover of music. My father was a local DJ on local radio in Hull.
Oh,
So
wow.
he, in the 80s and when I was a boy, he always had an access to a library of music. So this is in the days when you'd have to physically go into a store and buy a
Right.
tape, a cassette tape, because CDs weren't a thing. So he would often make a mixtape. You know, everybody else would be at home making a mixtape, listening to the radio and pressing stop and record. My dad would make me a mixtape in the recording studio because he'd get a tape and he'd just give it to me and go, there's the top 20 songs of this month.
Oh, that's cool.
I was very fortunate. So me and my brother would always be listening to whoever it was that would brought out the songs, you know, the Michael Jacksons and the Duran Durans and the, you know, all those kind of pop tunes of the time and the one-hit wonders. They were all, we had them like on that kind of mixtape that now this is 1983. We had our own version of it because it was on my dad's mixtape, you know?
Yeah, the Now CDs early in the before they were a thing.
Yeah.
Personalized. Very cool. In 2016, you released a film that you co-wrote and starred in, The Lighthouse.
That's right.
With that success of Wicked recently, if you could write a film version of any musical, what pops into your mind?
I'd write a film version of any musical. Assassins.
Yes.
Sondheim Assassins?
Assassins by Sondheim, John Weidman. I just think, not just because it's an incredible musical, but also I just think it's very relevant. It's an incredible story. I know that there was a version of it written at one point that never came of anything by John Weidman because he's a friend of mine. So there is a script somewhere that's out there of a screenplay of it, but wouldn't that be wonderful? And I think Sam Mendes was talking about doing it at one point, but it never happened.
This is the Stephen Sondheim
Yeah.
Assassins, right?
Have you heard it?
Yeah. When I went on my Sondheim deep dive a few years ago, I discovered that one. I watched some smaller productions on YouTube and some bootlegs of the Broadway version, but I've wondered what the national reception would be of that particular one. Because on the surface, it has one tone, and then you watch the whole thing, it's got something entirely different to say, which is fascinating. And, you know, the American attention span and, you know, tendency to do knee-jerk reactions on things. I wonder how the non-New York Broadway crowd would take to that story.
Agreed.
Because it is fascinating.
Agreed. It's a tricky subject to get into an objective view and a story, you know, because it's so...
Absolutely.
Especially, it would ruffle some feathers, you know, and I think that's the thing. But I just think under the right person who understood how musicals work and tick, which is a big thing of mine, I think, you know, with Wicked, I think the guy that's done Wicked has done a great job because he's gone for it. He gets how musicals work, and that's why it's such a huge hit. I loved it. I thought it was great fun. I think with something like Assassins, you'd have to get somebody who really understands how theatre works and has a real vision of what they think a screenplay of that musical should be like. It would have to be a really clear vision of palettes and style.
Yeah.
Because it could fall flat on its face.
When your main characters are truly despised people in American history, it's hard to make that watchable on a national front. So I'd really be curious how they could do that.
I know.
And it's funny. It's very funny.
Not just the music, but the script is brilliant.
Yep.
And that's John. You know, the scene where the guy who's sitting there, it's on the album, the Broadway album with Neil Patrick Harris, they recorded a lot of the dialogue. There's the brilliant speech that the guy who's dressed as the Christmas character,
Right.
Father Christmas, he's talking into a dictaphone, actually, talking to Nixon, you know, about what he's going to do. And I could come and I could make all this better, you know, talking about the American dream. And it's just so dark and brilliantly written. And Christ, it doesn't half encompass the frustrations of a lot of people in the Western world, you know?
There's no fucking hamburgers. I'm going to go a bit deeper now. Ego is not a dirty word. And Thaco gave an incredible answer to this, and so did Pippa Granderson. So I'm interested in hearing your journey, because you've had this incredible career and you started young. And we all have an ego, so it's not coming from a mean place, I promise. How have you managed yours over time in terms of getting roles, competing against your friends and stuff? And how was it when you were younger compared to now when you're older and wiser?
It is hard at times.
Yeah.
It's the rejection that we face as creatives, actors, that we're always second guessing ourselves. Are we good enough? And you have to sort of remind yourself, you have to be ambitious but not competitive. Everybody has to have ambition. I get up in the morning and I have ambition to make sure today's going to be a good day rather than a shit day. So yeah, I have to be ambitious with what I want to do. I have to make my own work and make things happen and try not to and support my friends as well. Be supportive and grateful that I've got friends who are in the same game as me and might be competition for me. And if they get the job, good for them. Maybe I'll get the next one. You know, that's the only way I can say that I hope makes sense.
Cool.
So, as an American, I'm extremely curious here. What was it like portraying the Americans' version of King George III to a British audience? And when I say Americans, I mean it was written by an American, like our perception of one of your royals.
Yeah.
And was it fun bringing that to the stage with the added pressure of, Hamilton's success?
Well, the added pressure was kind of a given, and that was something that I just had to kind of take on the chin, really.
Except,
which was amazing to be a part of that original production of Hamilton. I mean, I didn't change anything in the sense that it was exactly the same blocking. I had to stand in the same place. What I think we talked a lot about, and this was a conversation I had with Tommy Cale, who directed Hamilton, was the class and the entitlement and the duty of the king at that time and now, even especially back then. Just the fact that it's a God-given right. You're the king. You're given this responsibility, and also you have no idea what it's like to not have that responsibility. So I tried to kind of lean into that, which helped find the irony and the kind of comedy, which was the truth. And I think, as Jonathan Groff and others who've played it in the States, as far as I'm aware, and I've seen Jonathan Groff do it on the Disney Plus film of it, and as brilliant as his portrayal of it is, and the original portrayal that most people would maybe prefer, I don't know. What I would say is that he played him as a kind of posh British guy, and the Americans kind of go, oh, that's funny, because that's the archetypal.
That's what I was getting at, yeah.
Posh British guy who kind of speaks a bit like this, a bit silly, is a bit, ooh, that's silly, and it's kind of a bit
plummy,
a bit of a cod British accent. Whereas I wanted to play him like you were watching The Crown, like you were actually watching a real person as King George, who comes out and is addressing his which is there in the song and the staging for anybody else who wants to play that part. I came out and played it like, okay, I'm here to address my subjects, like the king would if he was doing a speech on TV now, I suppose. And it was dead serious. And I had a genuine question for you. Why so sad? What's going on? Let's talk. And the moment that they change the subject, I get cross. Don't change this, got really cross. And it made it funny, I suppose. I mean, it was funny in a different way in the States and a different way for an American audience. But then the British audience kind of got the irony of it, I suppose, because we're on the other side of the pond looking at the American dream play out in front of our eyes. And the kind of idealized fantasy of the Declaration of Independence. And how's that going, guys? Do you know what I mean?
What do you mean idealized? Hey.
No, but do you know what I mean? It's like, we're and that's what King George is kind of, and later on in the storytelling of King George, you're listening to him sing different lyrics about, hang on, so somebody else has stepped in. I didn't know that was what somebody could do. It's because the king is, which is brilliant writing from Lin-Manuel Miranda, but I got to play it in a kind of, like, I was genuinely like, what the fuck? Like, this isn't going to work because America, who are these people that they think they know? I got to kind of really lean into the kind of patronizing entitlement of the British Empire, I suppose. And also to be playing it like literally a 4 or 5 minute walk away from Buckingham Palace. And that's how close we were to Buckingham Palace. And to do it in front of a British audience who laugh for different reasons. Also the element of pantomime, which is that I'm talking to the audience, and we had to fix a few things in previews because the audience were heckling me, which, in the UK we have this thing called pantomime, which is a tradition of theatre, which is based on commedia dell'arte, which is where the audience are involved and the characters talk to the audience and ask for responses. And so I was talking to the audience. They had me talking to the audience because that's what they'd done it like in America. The British audience were talking back to me and they were like, no, that can't happen. It was like, well, you're asking me in this really camp costume to come out. Because the other thing about pantomime, it's very camp. It's men dressed in camp costumes. And I says, it's pantomime. They says, no, it's not pantomime. And I went, I know it's not pantomime, so we've got to fix it. So we had to tweak a few things so that it wasn't quite as direct a dress. Because if you say to the audience in a panto, that's a red fire hydrant and it's blue, the audience will shout, oh, no, it isn't, because they know the drill. And then you go, oh, yes, it is. And they go, oh, no, it isn't. That's pantomime. They just know the rules of what the responses are. And it was almost like I was talking to the audience. I was getting people heckling me. So, somebody shouted, when I shouted, what comes next? Somebody shouted, fuck Brexit. Like, a British audience in previews, it was like, yeah, wow, okay, we can't have that happen. Because, of course, that got a laugh from the audience. And they were like, no, we don't want that. It was funny, but we don't want that to happen. It's like, well, there you go.
Rocky Horror audiences are very much callback. But anyways, was there ADR on Les Miserables because you featured as the foreman who fired Fontaine was their ADR with that live singing. That's what the world wants to know.
Yeah, but not to kind of redo it. We did it, we recorded it all live and it was all live, but there was ADR in the sense, but only in the sense that there only ever it normally is ADR. Like, oh, that there's too much going on. The pickups, it was minor bits and it would be the same as we were on set. It was like you need to sing that bit or speak that bit.
Yep.
So yeah, there was, but 95% of it was recorded live, like it would normally be on a film set, and the elements would get in the way or there was a problem with the sound or whatever it was. So we need to redo that scene, all that moment in that scene. The thing is with ADR, it's often weird things that you wouldn't think about. Like, if you're struggling with somebody, you have to go, and they haven't got the sound of that because there's two people doing it. So they want to mix it so it sounds more authentic.
That's it. Usually it's like little words for me that I sort of stuff up along the way or I've said the wrong word.
Yeah.
It's like dyslexia. I'll say the wrong word. It's wordlexia, I call it. So I'm forever ADRing on this show. Steve?
You performed in a wide variety of roles from Shakespeare to various movies to contemporary musicals. What are the challenges you faced with switching between these styles, and what techniques do you use to perfect those disciplines?
First of all, I think with musicals, it's a muscle. The voice, the singing voice is a muscle. Like, if you asked me to go and do King George now, I'd probably be able to do it, but I'd probably feel very faint hitting those notes in the same way that if you asked a bodybuilder to suddenly start lifting however many hundreds of pounds, they wouldn't be able to just go up to their big weight after a month off because they'd be like shit. So you're kind of using a muscle in your vocal muscle, so you need to warm up to that. So I think that's the thing with adjusting to being in a musical. You tend to sort of get yourself into a place where you warm up to it and you practice every day, and it's almost like, if you want to run a marathon, you've got to start running every day, or else you're going to fail at mile 10. Get your fitness up to speed. With TV and film in general, I think it's just different muscle in terms of your timing that you've got to use in your head. Theatre, you show up every day at a certain time, you have a routine, you eat your food, whatever it is, you warm up on the stage before, if that's your thing. The show kind of ticks off from half an hour down to the quarter call, down to the 5-minute call, beginner's call, and if you're on stage, you're on stage, and then you do the scene and you do it every day, and you've got to repeat it. And Stranger Things, I mean, I did nearly 400 performances of that. And it's that repetition of keeping it fresh and discovering it for the first time and not it becoming a routine and sounding fake, basically. Whereas TV and film, it can be the opposite, because you can almost like blow your load too soon, if that makes sense, in the first take, when you've got to kind of like, if it's emotional or it's angry or it's happy, you have no petrol left in the tank because you've just gone for it in the rehearsal. So it's finding that balance and technique of like, is it close up, it's a wide shot. And TV and film, I think, is an exercise, going back to what I was talking about, learning your lines. It's an exercise in preparation, in doing it on your own, because you're kind of on your own. And a lot of the time, directors are technical directors. Some of them are great actors, directors, but a lot of them have come from a technical background, so they're not necessarily interested in you coming up with a character. That's why I think a lot of actors are cast on the way they look, and authenticity these days is because actually the directors don't have the capacity as a director to work with an actor. They want 90% of the job to be done on the casting. You look like a policeman and have done police work, so you're going to know how to move and talk like a policeman, whereas some actors are great at that. So that's the thing with TV and film. Preparation is key, which, a lot of that is making sure you know your lines, having ideas, having the confidence on a film set. There's a lot going on, a lot of people, to be able to ask questions and take control of the situation in a mannered and polite way. Because some actors are dicks. Some actors are insecure, famous,
no way,
rude dicks who throw their weight around. And it comes from insecurity, because it's a nerve-wracking thing. And action, you've got to pull it out the bag. Some of these actors haven't learned that. And some actors even, I see people talking on podcasts and social media, I don't learn my lines. I do it and it's like, great. The only reason you don't learn your lines is because you're famous and nobody's powerful enough to tell you that you haven't put the work in. We'll all sit back and wait for you to catch up. That's what pisses me off. It's like, no, sorry. And I like to keep it fresh. It's really selfish, that, in my opinion.
Louder.
And I just think, learn your lines, show up prepared, have ideas, be nice. It's as simple as that. Respect everybody, from the runner who is making coffee and make sure everybody's in the right place at the right time, to the producer, the sound mixer, the props person. If the props person says don't touch that, don't touch it. It's their job to make sure those things don't break. Don't look at them like they've spoken to you like you're an idiot. Learn your lines, respect other people's space. If another actor's got their own thing, stay out of their way. Try not to be friends with everybody. Don't expect to be friends with everybody. It's tricky. Theatre's harder these days because you're away from your family. It's antisocial hours. You're working in the evening, especially weekends at the moment. The commercial sector, especially Stranger Things, the schedule was crazy. 2 on a Friday, 2 on a Saturday, and a Sunday matinee, and we just had no social life. I never saw my family at the weekends, and that I'm grateful for the work, and I was so pleased to be a part of that production. But I didn't see anyone for a year, and there's no work-life balance. And to go back to the politics of it all, we don't get paid enough. We used to, but we don't anymore. If you compare inflation to ticket prices and tickets and wages, it just doesn't add up. So you're constantly adding up. Now I'm in a stage where I want to work. I've got to work to make a living, because I don't make as much money as some people might think I do. I get by, and I have a nice life when I'm working, but I've got to work hard for that. And so I'm constantly, is this going to be the right step for me? Is this the right thing to do? And should I go and do this job? Is that a good enough part for me? Should I? So it's a balance, it's a juggle, and trying to live a normal life as well. Trying to make sure that I'm not disappearing up my own acting arsehole of thinking that I'm super important and famous. And why would anybody want to be famous? It's cool when people respect you, and like you've met you guys, and you've said some nice things about me today. But I'm not interested in walking down the street and people knowing who I am and screaming because they want to, because they've got a crush on me, that they think that it just doesn't interest me. I just want to be an actor. I want to play good parts and tell stories.
Yeah,
Here. Yeah.
I get that.
Long story short,
It's being an artist.
Yeah, being an artist, exactly.
That's what it is all about. But speaking of that, back to our house. Back then, there wasn't as many jukebox musicals. Did it feel when you were creating that you had a bit more abandon because there wasn't the format that they had developed by that up to that point? So now everything's sort of standard. Every jukebox musical feels like a paint by numbers. This very much didn't. Did it? Was it sort of? Was there a bit of reckless abandon in terms of playing around with these ideas? That driving in my car scene, that's my favorite song. That scene was amazing. It was stupid and funny.
What it comes down to is there aren't many people out there, and I really mean this, creatively, who understand how musicals work and what shouldn't be in a musical and what should be in a musical, and when musicals aren't good enough. And why the ones that work are always down to the few people that do know their stuff. There's a reason why West Side Story, Phantom of the Opera, all those great songs of all those great musicals of Stephen Sondheim worked, and that's probably a lot to do with Hal Prince, who was the director and producer of those. He creatively knew how to manufacture those shows in relation to what the audience were taking in and the messages they were giving and the storytelling. In the same way that there's a reason why some of the greatest family entertainment movies ever made are all made by Steven Spielberg. It's funny that, isn't it? The same directors keep coming up because they're brilliant at what they do and they respect the form. And I think that's what is usually brilliant about a show that works, is because the creative team are, first of all, they collaborate well and they know their stuff. And that was very much the case on Our House, was that Matthew and Tim and Peter Darling, who choreographed it, and Phil Bateman, who was the MD, and Paul Keeve, who was the illusionist, and Lynn Page, who was Peter Darling's associate choreographer on it, who's gone on to do all her own stuff, and Madness's music, and Tim Firth's book, were all working in harmony with each other and respected it. And there's absolutely no coincidence that Matthew's gone on to direct Matilda, which has been one of the most successful stage musicals in the world. Whereas there are so many other brilliant directors out there who have a go at doing musicals, and they're great. I've seen great plays they've directed, and they're wonderful, but then they do a musical and they fall flat on their face because they don't respect the form and they haven't actually got any understanding of how they work because they've not really ever done them, and they think they know how they work. There's a few around at the moment that haven't worked. I mean, it's quite easy to spot them, that have been huge flops on Broadway and the West End, that have come from the West End, and you just go, well, Anyway, it's frustrating. So I think, why did Our House work? Because it was it had the same ingredients that West Side Story had, that Les Mis had, that Mamma Mia had, to be fair. Mamma Mia knows what it is, and Caroline was in the original cast of that in London. And again, it had a great creative team who respected that it was all a bit of a send-up, and that's why it works. So the audience relax and have a good time. They're not being force-fed a book musical of ABBA songs. They're going, oh, this is a bit silly. So they're all okay with that, and they go with their tongue in their cheek, and they have fun.
No, I couldn't. Sorry, but this I could.
Yeah, but that's fair enough.
That's the difference between the two. And I love ABBA.
That's fair enough.
It's
Listen,
not.
don't get me wrong. I'm not like a huge fan of Mamma Mia. Well, I don't want to sit through it every day of my life, and I've seen it maybe once or twice in the theater. But I completely appreciate why it works and why it's
Yeah,
made
yeah.
hundreds of millions of pounds. Because I think they would admit the producers and directors would admit that it originally started out as a musical that was quite serious. And it was a serious story about three friends, and with one of them had three partners that she didn't know who the father was, with these ABBA songs, and it was quite a kind of traditional book musical. But then
Yeah.
within the first week of previews, they realised the audience were laughing at them. They flipped it on its head and turned it into a bit of a comedy, I think it already was funny, but they really made sense of what are the audience in, what are they watching, and it all fell into place. So yeah.
Oh wow. No, I really I looked at the embarrassment, the way that was translated. Fantastic. Yeah, so honestly, and I don't mean any disrespect because I've loved Madness for so long, my expectations weren't very high. They really weren't. But I knew you were coming in the show, and I'm like, I have to watch it this time, and
And
I
this is
did.
the problem why I think it didn't work was because a lot of people's expectations
Yes,
were.
I'm so sorry. I really am so sorry, but I wanted to see it for so long.
And when I say it didn't work, I mean it didn't sell. It only ran for 10 months. So it meant that Madness
Yes.
fans didn't want to see a musical because their expectations were, I don't want to see a musical of my stuff.
Yeah.
And musical theatre fans were like, I'm not interested in another jukebox musical of Madness songs. And then when people came to see it, they were genuinely blown away by it and were like, I mean, I've got people like Brett Goldstein, who's the guy from Ted Lasso. He's kind of a mate of mine because he saw Our House. He came to see it again, was dragged along by his family, and saw it 5 times or something when he came when he was younger. And he's like, he kind of like weirdly fanboys around me. He's like, "Oh, you're Joe Casey from that," because he loved that show so much because it was just he was so pleasantly surprised by how smart and clever it was and is, and it still continues to be a brilliant show that youth productions and amateur productions do all over the world to great success, and that's kind of one of the great joys of my life, hearing about it and people associating me with that, really, not in a fame way, but in a kind of, yeah, I was the guy that created that role and you saw me do it because you watched that video. So it's cool. Very exciting for me.
Yeah, and I didn't know you were in it until recently when I was listening to that recording and you mentioned it, and I'm like, oh shit, was he in that? And I looked it up and I'm like, wow, he was too. Now I definitely have to invite him on the show. But I just want to throw it in there just about that. We've just got one more question and we'll round it up. But in the driving in my car number, as I said, that's my favorite song, and that number was so stupid and so funny. I loved every minute of it.
What I was going to say earlier on, some of those ideas we were able to. So, for example, the I think it was in the writing that they get in a car and it drives down the road whilst they're singing the song, and then it goes on a roller coaster and it does all this.
Yes.
And then we were like, what if it's like the Titanic moment?
Yeah, and it did Grease and it was Star
Titanic,
Wars.
and we did. Grease was already there. Star
Yeah.
Wars was my idea that we pull out. And then the next day they came in with my dog's barking at me. They came in with plastic lightsabers, and we went, cool. Let's put that into the number as well. And they added a Star Wars variation.
Laughing all the way through it.
I got it queued up here. I'm gonna
Good.
make sure that's in my save to watch.
Yeah, Madness had hit after hit. They had bop after bop. They really did. I thought that basically every song fit in. Maybe not so much Wings of the Dove. That maybe felt a little bit forced. But what else could you have put in there? You're in Las Vegas celebrating the weather.
It's fun. It's fun. It takes the story into a different place.
It does.
And what was cool as well was that I got to know the band quite well. Suggs has become quite a good mate. Suggs actually came in and played. Suggs came in and played my dad for about 6 weeks and was amazing. So I got to hang out with him.
Wow, I'm gonna have to invite him on the show because that's when we'll do our house on the show. Is if we can get Suggs on the show. Oh my god, I would probably be professional and not fangirl about it. Okay, now just a quick story. I was, doing the show. We got to invite on guests, and I was looking at a PR company, and I noticed a site or like an image on their site saying Dreamland, and I'm like, what's Dreamland? So I looked it up. It's this theme park in Margate, right? And so I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the roller coaster, the scenic railway. And then at some point in our house, Margate was said, but then driving in my car was on a roller coaster. And I swear to God, that was the same roller coaster, the scenic railway, because we have a scenic railway here in Melbourne as well.
Possibly. Do you know what? I haven't even thought about that. Maybe I should look into that and find out. I've never been to Margate.
Another weird coincidence. Like it was literally 2 hours apart. I was looking at the thing. I was looking at Margate at the Dreamland and like all the rides. And they got a concert thing.
Seems like your life is defined by coincidences.
I think I'm in the Truman Show. God, anyone watching this show Poor things. Anyways, we're going to move it on.
There is a fun one for you. When was the last time you jumped in a puddle for fun?
Probably with my daughter when she was younger. You know, we'd all go out on a walk, a rainy walk with wellies on, as we call them over here. You call them rain boots.
Gum boots. Yeah.
And gum boots, rain boots, whatever you want to call. We call them wellies, Wellington boots. We call them.
Silly name, rain boots. Yeah, it's just entirely too specific.
I remember being in New York with my wife, and it snowed, and we weren't expecting snow, and we were drenched. Our feet were drenched because it was so cold, and there was slush everywhere, and we didn't have appropriate footwear. And we went to buy wellies, and nobody knew what we were talking about. And then somebody went, "Oh, rain boots," and we were like, "Yeah," and they went, "They're there," and it was like, "Oh, yeah, rain boots." So yeah, we two worlds collide.
It's kind of like hey Aaron, Melbourne,
Melbourne, or Edinburgh.
Yeah,
I've tried, and I don't want to butcher that. I'm sorry. That's
My Canadian friend told me this funny story about he was on the tube, so the underground, the subway in London, and there was this group of Americans, and they were like, "Okay, guys, so next stop is us," and they were sort of explaining the tube stop. And it's Leicester Square, guys, Leicester Square, which we pronounce Leicester Square. Leicester, but it's pronounced Leicester. And this British guy went over, "Excuse me, mate, you're saying it wrong. It's Leicester Square." And the Americans were like, "Oh, great, sure, thank you."
oh yeah.
they would fall for it too.
Set up there with like Gloucestershire.
Gloucestershire, yeah.
Gloucestershire. It's Gloucestershire.
That's it.
Shire. That's the thing. You always say Shire. I'm from Yorkshire, so it's Yorkshire. Where you say Yorkshire.
That's where the hobbits live. Yeah, in the Shire.
In the Shire, yeah.
Shire.
Well, absolutely, the Shire.
Worcestershire sauce.
Worcestershire sauce.
Yeah.
Worcestershire sauce.
Yeah.
Funny.
I can show you some Australian
Melbourne.
names. Or Des Moines. There you go. Des Moines.
Des Moines.
Yeah.
Des Moines.
Payback's
Des
a
Moines.
bitch. But anyways, that's it. We made it out of the torture chamber in one piece. Thank you so much. I'm truly so thrilled. As I say, like
Thank
I've
you.
seen the bank job that many times, so who knew you'd one day end up on my show? Where can people find you on the social media?
At Mike Jibson, MikeJibson. Mike Jibson, all one word. I'm on Instagram and I'm on Threads, but I don't really do much on Threads.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm on Instagram. So yeah, and it's Hey Act, the Hull and East Yorkshire Arts and Culture Trust. HEY, Hey Act is the short version. So the Hull and East Yorkshire Arts and Culture Trust.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, I will put the details. If there's a link, can you send me the details and I can put that in the description?
I will do.
So, yeah. Anyways, we'll let you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers, guys. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Wonderful talking to you.
It's really nice. Say hi to Caroline for me.
I will do. Have a great Sunday, because it's Sunday there now for you, and have a great Saturday. You're about to start your day.
Take care. We shall see you next time. Hooroo!
Cool, guys.
Catch you later.
Thanks, guys.
Like quicksand!
Oh, let me have him, Joe.